what kind of future the globalist ruling class has to offer. But we have a different future in mind. The globalists can all go to hell. I have come to Texas.
In the heart of Europe, a quiet revolution of power is underway, one that will define the next chapter of the continent's democracy, economy, and alliance systems. Hungary, once a loyal member of the Union, is now rewriting the rulebook. If you believe that what happens in Brussels stays in Brussels, think again. For this story will reach your home, your job market, your pension, and your vote. Welcome to EU Politics. And if you haven't already, subscribe to EU Politics now so you don't miss a moment of this turning point. Prime Minister Viktor Orban, long a contentious voice in European affairs, has taken a step that few anticipated. He will press the United States, through President Donald Trump, for an exemption from new US sanctions on Russian oil. His message is clear. Hungary will defend its energy supply regardless of the prevailing Western narrative. And when one EU member begins to diverge so markedly, the ripple effects extend across every member state. On October 31st, 2025, Reuters reported that Orban intends to seek an exemption from US sanctions on Russian oil firms, emphasizing Hungary's dependence on pipeline-based crude imports. He argues that his country's geography, landlocked, reliant on the Druzhba pipeline and legacy energy networks, leaves it vulnerable if it must abruptly cut ties with Russian energy. At the same time, Orban is preparing for a meeting with Trump in Washington on November the 7th, where energy, trade, defense, and Russia policy will all be on the table. The optics are potent, a Hungarian leader seeking direct bilateral engagement with the US, sidestepping the typical Brussels-led structure of decision-making. For the EU, it is a red flag. If one member state moves outside the logic of collective policy, the foundation of unity may shake. But this isn't just about energy. Earlier this month, on October the 6th, Orban declared that Hungary should not adopt the euro because the European Union is disintegrating. That statement cuts at the heart of what the EU has long stood for: integration, shared currency, collective destiny. By rejecting the euro, Orban is signaling a new narrative: Hungary first, Brussels later. Furthermore, Orban is spearheading a push to form a Ukraine-skeptical alliance within the EU, aligning with states such as the Czech Republic and Slovakia to oppose accelerated Ukrainian membership and additional aid to Kiev. In essence, he is challenging not just policy, but the direction of the Union. Whether enlargement, sanctions, and defense should be decided by the bloc or can be influenced by sovereign national decision-making. And deepening the concern in Brussels, Hungary's rule of law standing is under scrutiny. Human Rights Watch has urged the Union's member states to consider a vote under Article 7 on Hungary's ongoing suppression of judicial independence and free press. These accumulating signals paint a picture of a state not merely diverging, but actively redefining its relationship with the Union. Human Rights Watch. As we turn this narrative into your reality, remember, you are watching one of the most consequential moments in European politics. The choices made by a single country may shift the destiny of the many. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to EU Politics, because we'll keep tracking this story as it moves from capitals to corridors to your corner of the world. Let's go deeper. Hungary's energy debate is more immediate than many appreciate. While most EU states have reduced or eliminated Russian fossil fuel imports since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Hungary's figures tell a different story. Analysts estimate that more than 80% of Hungary's crude oil still comes via Russian pipelines. When Orban publicly states his willingness to challenge US sanctions, he is signaling that he will place Hungary's economic and energy security above collective Western posture. One misstep in the supply chain, one sudden blockage, and the consequences cascade. For the European Union, which has sought to position energy diversification and sanctions as key strategic tools, the message is troubling. If one member refuses the collective path, how does the machinery of sanctions, shared funding, defense, or enlargement proceed? The architecture of Europe's shared strategy depends on compliance, predictability, and solidarity. Hungary's new posture disrupts all three. Next, consider the euro narrative. Few external observers may register how symbolic and practical this is. Adopting the euro has been the anchor of EU membership for many states. It signals alignment, stability, and commitment. But Orban's statement that Hungary should not join because the EU is disintegrating turns that assumption on its head. He is telling his electorate that being further embedded in the Union could be risky. And domestically, this message serves to whip up nationalist sentiment. As the 2026 parliamentary election in Hungary looms, Orban is mobilizing his base around themes of sovereignty, independence, and underdog defiance. Polls indicate opposition momentum. To counter that, Orban's government announced on October the 31st a pension top-up measure costing about 0.6% of GDP, alongside tax cuts and housing loan offers. This is more than election year generosity. It is political insurance. When external credibility weakens, internal loyalty becomes the shield. Behind the scenes, control of media and narrative is part of Orban's strategy. On the same day, a pro-government media group acquired Hungary's leading tabloid and bolstered its digital platforms, a move critics call a further consolidation of media control. In short, energy, economy, media, elections, all are part of the same campaign of strategic repositioning. It's time to pull back and view the bigger picture. The European Union was built on the promise that democratic states, bound by shared rules, would yield greater strength together. But what happens when one member says, "No, I will choose my own path"? The Union must respond, either with flexibility or with enforcement. Either path has risks. If the EU soft-pedals and lets Hungary slide, what message do other states receive? That divergence is tolerated. The logic of uniformity weakens. Integration slows, membership value wobbles. On the other hand, if the EU forces Hungary back in line through budget penalties, sanctions, or exclusion, it will face internal backlash, political turbulence, and possibly a domino effect of member state resistance. The saw edge is razor thin. But let's bring this home. What does this mean for you? First, energy costs. When Hungary resists a sanctions regime and when energy supply lines are contested, countries that share pipelines, grids, or logistics chains feel it. The cost of energy could rise, the price of goods could fluctuate. Second, democratic norms. If media control and rule of law decay go unchecked in one member state, the precedent is set for others. The integrity of institutions in your own country may face similar pressure. Third, political culture. The message that "my nation first" can stir appeals across Europe. In countries where voters feel left behind, economy shrinking, or identity challenged, the ripple is real. So what should we watch? The November 7th meeting between Orban and Trump will be crucial. Will the US grant an exemption? Will it speak publicly of divergence from Brussels? Will other EU and NATO states publicly respond? Then the Hungarian 2026 election. Will Orban secure a new term, or will opposition push matter? And finally, will the EU invoke mechanisms such as Article 7 or cohesion fund penalties to signal consequences for diverging states? What this story teaches is that Europe is no longer just about Brussels versus national capitals. It is about power. Who holds it, how it is exercised, and whether collective rules matter. Viktor Orban's Hungary is not just challenging the EU's policies, it is challenging the idea that the Union will always dictate direction. And for our channel, yes, this entire narrative matters to EU politics viewers. History is being written, power centres are shifting, and as you watch, you are not merely a spectator, you are part of the story. If you haven't done it yet, hit subscribe to EU Politics so every new twist and turn reaches you first. In closing, Hungary is no longer a reluctant member. It is a bold challenger. The EU is no longer just an institution of consensus, it is a stage for fault lines. The question is not just what will happen to the EU, but what will Europe look like if one of its members changes course? The answer is still ahead of us, but the signals are visible.